So we're here today joined by my friend and colleague, Lloyd Burrell. And Lloyd is the creator of electrosensitive.com. He is also the creator of a new book, which is just out, which is entitled the EMF Practical Guide, which I'm so looking forward to diving into. But and a kit to go with that. But he's one of the foremost experts and researchers on EMF, in that he's interviewed probably more people on the planet that are EMF scientists, researchers, experts, and he's accumulated probably more people than me, even, Lloyd. So we're gonna talk about his new work and how you could take advantage of it. And before we do that and access it, I should say, but before we do that, Lloyd, I just want to kind of not to do too much of a deep dive here, but let's talk about the situation as it currently is on our planet. What is your take with what's going on? How does EMF or the proliferation of 5G relate to coronavirus, to COVID-19? And what's the truth of, both the situation and that relationship, kind of as best as you could sum it up? Because you had an expert named Paul Doyon write an article for you that was very profound about that connection. So if you could sum up your perspective and for our listeners as we
okay. So I'll just come back to you on that. I do not consider myself an expert on EMFs. I don't go around telling people I'm an expert on EMFs. I consider myself an expert on dealing with EMFs in my life and this thing we call electrical hypersensitivity. And that's why I'm speaking to you here today, Josh, is because of what happened with me, with my own experience with a cell phone and these massively debilitating symptoms that I experienced over years. 2 years completely in the dark. I literally could not use my cell phone. I was getting symptoms around my computer, TV, the radio. I was not well in my own home. I was not well when I went out, and it just got worse and worse and worse. I went to see medical experts. Nobody could do anything for me. I went to tests and scans, and I was really just telling myself I was okay, and I wasn't okay. I was just kind of going down a dark tunnel. And I was really in a state of despair. Because it seemed as though there was no way out. This was 2002, and that's how this whole thing started. And so that's just to address your question, why I'm speaking about it, so people understand why I'm doing this. It's not just because I'm curious, it's because I was seriously ill with this and had to figure it all out. And I started the website in 2009, electrosensitive.com, and I wrote 2 ebooks. I did a few courses, and then I wrote the book last year, finished it at the end of last year. It took me most of the year because I'm not a writer, but it needed to be done. And on this such a profound subject of EMFs and health, electromagnetic fields, this thing we call electromagnetic fields, these invisible forces that are all around us, which most people can't feel, which I can. And so I no longer have the debilitating symptoms because I do all the stuff which is in my book and more, because that is the EMF stuff in there. And that's really, I wanted to write something definitive. But I still feel it. And so, yeah, with regard to 5G and the coronavirus, so what happened is Paul put an email out and he sent it to a lot of people, and like his best friend replied, one other person, and me. And this went out to, I don't know, like 50 people. And I said, yeah, I'll publish it. He didn't write it for me. He wrote this really rather brilliant piece on the link between 5G and the coronavirus, very well researched. I know Paul already. I say I know him. He's one of the many people that I've interviewed in my podcast series, and I know the quality of his work, and I feel people. So I really feel where Paul is and what he's going through and everything. And I understand his whole story of why he left the US and he went out abroad because of this the impact that EMFs, notably a cell tower, with him it was a cell tower, all this, what this did to him. And this really does change lives. So I guess the million-dollar question is 5G causing the coronavirus? And again, and I'm just giving you my take on all this because I don't consider myself an expert, but I have researched this and I do follow this. You know, the coronavirus thing, it's difficult, obviously, not to follow it, but it's what I do more and more is when in crisis situations like this, and this is a big crisis situation, but I've been in other crisis situations personally worse than this, because what happened to me in 2002 to like mid 2005 was actually worse for me than what's going on now, because I don't have debilitating symptoms every day. It's terrible for humanity and the planet, but this is like, it's not as if I'm sitting pretty, but you know, I'm taking protective measures like everybody else. But so no, 5G does not cause the coronavirus, in my view. It does not cause the virus. Could it be contributing to it? It certainly could, and I'm saying that based on the research, notably, you know, there's over 100 studies which link the biological effects of EMFs on the immune system. There is Martin Paul, who's done some, as you know, who you've interviewed, who I've interviewed years ago now, on this particular aspect of 5G. And of course, with Dr. Paul's work, it's about the voltage, these what we call the voltage gated calcium channels. For people who've never heard of this, wonder what the heck it is. It's just like in your cells, as these gates which are opening, closing, letting the calcium in. And when we expose your body, your cells, because we're just a collection of cells, to these EMFs, all different kinds of EMFs, be it radio frequency, radiation, electric fields, magnetic fields, dirty electricity, like the whole spectrum, more or less. Okay, so there are certain frequencies that are possibly that do this to a greater extent, but we're getting this. It's perturbing the action, the functioning of these channels, and that would appear to be the link, or one of the links, between 5G and the coronavirus, in that it is possibly exacerbating the effects. There is research linking exposure of 5G to viruses and how this impacts viruses, and certainly it does seem to, we're kind of talking about the same things all the time. We're back to this oxidative stress, the increased intercellular calcium, the inflammation. So yeah, there is definitely a link.
What Richard Lear, I love how Richard Lear, who we interviewed in the summit, and I believe you've spoken with him too, right?
No, I haven't. Oh, I know his work.
But he talks about P factor, and so he builds on that understanding of the voltage gated calcium channels and oxidative stress, and includes nitrative stress and all these other factors. But it's really, and he's looked at the different, all the silos of science, you know, coming together, looking at all of how they connect in ways that, you know, most people haven't made that connection, or he's kind of the first to in a deeper way. But thank you for highlighting Martin Paul's work, because I agree that it's, first of all, thank you for your humility that you say you're not an expert. You know, I would beg to differ. I would also like to say that I'm not one of the world's leading experts either. I've just talked to a bunch of them like you have. And so we're doing our best to open up this conversation, because from my view, I agree that there's more than 100 studies, even just on the bioinitiative report, and people can go to bioinitiative.org under chapter 8, which is specifically on the immune system effects. And there's, I think the first part by Ole Johansson has 70 studies, and the second part by Yuri Grigoriev has 59 studies, like if I counted correctly. But this is a very big topic. Thank you for saying that it's not all one or the other. It's not that 5G is the coronavirus, and it's not that 5G has no link. There is, you know, I agree with you, Lloyd, that there is a link, that the immunological effects must be, I mean, this is critical that we understand this. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. And yeah, for people who are interested, there's 52 pages there just in the Bioinitiative report, solid science, peer-reviewed science. And I'm always referencing people to this really excellent report published in 2007 initially, big update in 2012, subsequent updates right through to 2019. It really is solid science. It's, for me, it's so we can say, you know, it's like the 5G serves for, at last, the 5G serves a purpose here, is that we can link in the 5G into this coronavirus. That I can say. But for me, it's not about 5G and the coronavirus. It's about EMFs. It's about all these EMFs. And this is the important point that people need to understand. It's about all these exposures. And, you know, I re-interviewed or Miller a while ago, and he says to me, you know, Lloyd, you wouldn't believe it, because I go out and see people in the Los Angeles area that they're electrically sensitive, because this is his speciality, is helping people that are electrically hypersensitive, if you want, because we're, as you no doubt know, we're all electrically sensitive. And I just want to say this because everybody doesn't always get this, is that EMFs affect everybody. And that is what is really loud and clear in the studies. EMFs affect everybody. They affect our cellular processes. They affect us at this fundamental level. And it's just that some people can feel it and some people can't. So yeah, it's 5G now, and it's going to be 6G, and it's going to be, because it's going to go on. As you know, we're not going to stop it. For me, it's about raising awareness. This is my mission: raising awareness and sharing solutions. And why? Because when I became sick, you know, I went to doctors. They ridiculed me. I mean, one neurologist, she laughed in my face. She said, you know, it's not possible. A cell phone could make you sick. And this is still happening. And this is why I continue. And also for our kids. I know you've got children. I've got children. And this is why I started talking about it publicly, is because I couldn't sit there as a father and not share this thing that I just knew. So I hadn't really done the research back then when I first started talking about it. I did the research afterwards because I wanted to be able to explain it properly, you know, in a way that people can understand, because people want to know about the research. They want to know my story, but they want to know, and other people's stories, but they want to know about the research. And they've got somehow, well, it's not somehow, we both know why, you know, because the cell phone industry is doing this, and you know, not just the cell phone industry, but you know, big corporations are doing this, are putting the message out there very powerfully with a lot of money, and you know, the lobbies, and this is your strength, and I must just have to say, and I said it before we came on air, just great work you did on the 5G Crisis Summit. Awesome work. And so I've been following you for a while, and I know you had the Take Back Your Power before that, and just the way you took on this 5G baby. And I was actually going to do another EMF summit in last year, and when I saw you did the 5G summit, I said, let Josh take it away. It's not quite the same objective, and obviously we're different, and you brought your feel to it, and I did my EMF summit in my way. But yeah, awesome work.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Lloyd. That means a lot coming from you as one of the leaders in awareness here. We are not going to get into this conversation to the agenda behind, you know, how this coronavirus pandemonium has been and is being purposely used, you and I agree, for nefarious purposes. Let's say there is an agenda. It appears very much to be a worldwide agenda, and I described it just this morning as a coup attempt. And seeing what's coming out now, I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling. But yet you have, you know, companies like Telstra in Australia, big telecom in Australia, saying that in response to the coronavirus, people are working at home now, that their kids are learning at home. We need to massively deploy 5G now. So basically everyone's on lockdown, and you have towers going up. You have 5G being rapidly accelerated, almost exponentially, $500 million just from one telecom, probably getting stimulus money. I haven't researched that, but from the country of Australia. But $500 million has been allocated to rapidly advance 5G, and that's not the only one. So this is obviously it's a global agenda, and it's bewildering to see how the dots connect. It's not just 5G. There's a lot going on here. So I know we have a research thread that, if I could just plug it for a moment, it's on a Telegram channel called t.me/SOL, then the number 4, and then H. So right now, at the time of this recording, there's 600 on that. We're researching it together, and we're getting the updates out, and we're working on a new collaborative environment. So that's a summary maybe of the situation as it is now, but it's one of them. I want to ask you about one of the most bewildering things to me, Lloyd, is the apparent lack of critical thinking, the apparent lack of mental processes that most people, even our so-called leaders, are seeming to exhibit now. Now, you and I believe that and can recognize that there is a spiritual dimension behind what's happening very much. But how do you see even just that mental side of things, that cognition side of things? What role does EMF and 5G have in what we're observing now, which is a considerable percentage of the human population either exhibiting lack of mental focus or mental processes, or ranging from cloudy thinking to just lack of common sense, or I don't know if you want to get into some of it's purposeful, from those at the top, so to speak. But what does the research say? What did the experts say, Lloyd, about the link between EMF and 5G and the neurosciences and cognitive thinking?
Well, it's funny because I've been talking on this a lot. I actually done 2 talks on that very question over the last week. And there are very clear links as to how different EMFs, and notably studies, we're talking about research, microwave radiation exposures. So what we know very clearly, how they impact us, and what we know very clearly is that they impact the blood-brain barrier, as you know. So it's this protection that we have, which its job is to protect the brain from toxins, from viruses, and from all kinds of nasties, and also to keep the nutrients in. And what we know, and this goes back to like nearly 5 decades ago, 1975, Alan Frey, it's called the Frey effect, and what this does to our brain. And EMFs literally poke holes in this blood-brain barrier, the BBB. And when that happens, then my Lord, this is why I'm always, to every talk I do, I'm always saying to people, please do not put the cell phone next to your head. Because I was very fortunate, cell phone next to head, pain, cell phone away from head, no pain. So since 2002, I've never had a cell phone next to my head anymore. And I don't even own a cell phone today. And this is what I'm recommending to people, is to not, you got to walk the talk, folks. And this is what I'm doing, because what a hypocrite I would be if I was still using a cell phone when I'm saying all this. And that's my number 1 recommendation, is not to use a cell phone. I know like practically nobody is going to take that on board, but it's going to make people think. And obviously from that, then we move into, safe cell phone tips and all the things which I'm sure you've talked about many, many times. But to answer your question with regard to the research, so when we poke holes in this BBB, this blood-brain barrier, well, all kinds of strange things happen. And we know this, it's studies done on animals, mostly rats. And when Alan Frey did it in the 1970s, he was just injecting a dye into the circulatory system, exposing them to microwave radiation, and then boom, in fact, it was finding the dye in the brain. And he actually found that it made them more docile. And other studies are finding that It can create depression, which I experienced. It's one of the mechanisms is the neurotransmitters, these chemical messengers, and it upsets mood regulation. And it also, other studies show that it depletes serotonin and dopamine. And then we've got other studies which are showing it creates anxiety. And we've got a depletion of nutrients like zinc. We've got elevation of other nutrients like copper. So when we upset the zinc copper balance, then that can also create anxiety. And also a big one, which I'm sure you've talked about before, is how EMFs impact melatonin. And melatonin, this master hormone, and I'm really careful with this still, as to, because melatonin is perhaps the most important hormone your body creates. So it's created by the pineal gland in the very center, a little gland in the very center of your brain. And we know, and there's dozens of studies on this, that EMF exposures inhibit the production of melatonin. And that's why I'm going back to, and that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, is because I feel that there's too much emphasis on the wireless, as if it's just the wireless that's causing the problem. But it's not. It's all EMFs. And this is my message.
Yeah.
This is my message, is it's all EMFs. And it's particularly the EMFs when you sleep. One of the things people are thinking, one of the things people are saying to yourself is, well, there's nothing I can do. It's everywhere. What can I do? But there's so much you can do, as you know, because distance is your friend, because of this exponential way in which these invisible forces, these electromagnetic fields, impact our bodies. And so with so many things we can do to protect our sleep, which is absolutely fundamental. You know, it's not just getting a bit of kip. It's when your cells regenerate, rejuvenate, detoxify, and you've got all these cellular processes going on, which if you bring EMFs into the equation, well, all that kind of upsets the apple cart in a very big way, serious way, long-term way. And it's all about these subtle effects over time. And again, I was lucky. Pain, no pain. I was really so lucky, Josh. Whereas how many people have got symptoms that are listening to this, have got symptoms which apparently could have nothing to do with EMFs, but they do. You know, symptoms, arrhythmias, hip replacement, people putting their cell phones in their pockets, infertility is a massive one. You know, and I could go on. Obviously, cancer, which is very, very clear. The NTP study, $30 million federal study paid by US taxpayers, clear evidence of cancer. I mean, how much more obvious can it be? And as you say, people, despite all this, and maybe I'm not being very clear, maybe I'm not saying it sufficiently clearly, maybe, you know, there's something here which is difficult to understand. Yeah, I know it can appear difficult to understand when we talk about the deep science, and that's why I try to make it simple. But in very simple terms, yeah, it is. I think there is like a kind of a dumbing down effect because of how it's impacting our cells and our neurotransmitters, particularly. And this ties in with what Alan Frey, 1975, found in his pioneering research, that it was making the rats more docile.
Yeah, very well said. And as we're talking, I opened up the BioInitiative website. Right under Section 8, which is the immune system section, Section 9, evidence for effects on neurology and behavior. So anyone wanting to look at the science, bioinitiative.org, and go to Sections 8, Sections 9, and the whole report. There's almost 2,000 studies there. So yeah, Lloyd, thank you for that perspective. So tell us about your book now. Like what, and you mentioned some of the inspiration for writing your book, but you've done the EMF Summit. Mm-hmm. You've created, and you're constantly putting out tremendously valuable information on electrosense.com. I would encourage everyone to go there and sign up. And but now you've put it into a book. So is it just that you're accumulating all of the research you've done to this point and putting it in a format where somebody can, unplug, get off the computer and just, connect with an actual book and absorb the truth of the body of your work? Or tell us more about what's in that and the inspiration for, why you wrote
so the inspiration is to write the book I would have liked to have read when I became sick. It's like, this is it. I mean, the guide is like how to deal with these EMFs. What are EMFs? How do they affect us, and what to do? And each chapter is all we've got resumes in each chapter. So EMF Practical Guide. Resume. So it's my story in detail. Resumes in each chapter on the science. Resumes on each chapter very quickly into solutions. So like 20 chapters, something like that. And pretty much 15 of them just on solutions. And so problem, solution, but solution, because this was a problem which I encountered in 2002, was like there was no solution. And this is what was so soul destroying. And so this is why I was going around denying it, pretending everything was okay. And obviously that wasn't a strategy. And I was buying all the chips and the diodes and the harmonizers and all these things which were promising just like to make it go away, and they didn't. So I talk about that too. And it's really, everything is broken down into free and easy, firstly, and then secondly, intermediate, and then advanced. So it's addressed at people at all levels. It's readable. It's like people that have read it as friends and things, they said, wow, it's like you're speaking to me in my ear. Don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. So yeah, that was inspiration, really, to and to bring together, the essence of what I've learned from hundreds of interviews with researchers, scientists, building biologists, naturopathic doctors, MDs, mediums. Really, I've just interviewed really across the board, and I've always been interested, and I love doing these interviews because I really love listening. Above all, I love listening, and it's in a format, it's a podcast format, which is an audio format. It's a little bit different to video. And I'm not really one for standing on a stage, and I only do this, it's with me, it's all about the mission. It's about the mission. So once the mission's completed, which I hope it really hope it will very soon, then I'll go away and do something little less high profile. So I'm not, it's about the mission, and it's about helping people. And, quite frankly, people have been saying to me for years, Lloyd, why can't we get your book in paperback form? Because I'd already written a book, but I wanted to write, and obviously my skills have improved over time because I'm just an accountant. That's how I started out. I've got a business training, like a CPA. That's what you call it in America. And so, so then I knew how to write the book, and it was a time to do it, and it's needed. I feel the world, in all modesty, I feel the world needs this information now more than ever. Now, with what's happening with the 5G, with the coronavirus, and where we're going, the after 5G as well, which I'm sure you're thinking about too, because I know I am.
Well, yeah, if it's one thing that we're seeing from everything that's coming out now, and we're becoming aware, humanity is waking up. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're basically wanting to lock down us physically and in our consciousness. But so there's one thing we're seeing, Lloyd, is that we cannot trust the authorities to look out for us and to protect us from that which causes us harm. So it's now in our hands, and in your book, you've got a copy of it, on the way to me. I'm looking forward to diving into it myself, because I know that, just the quality of it is going to be so excellent. So, thank you for putting it together and making it so it's almost like you're time traveling, by writing the book that you wanted to read when you first became aware, when you first learned about it. That's going to be so powerful and effective for people time traveling in a way that you're meeting a lot of people who are just becoming aware about this for the first time. So I wanted to now just ask you, it's not just the book though. You've also created an online kit or like a course. So tell us about that and how people can access it.
So I've created a course to go with the kit. Why? Well, it's a how-to. So some people like reading, and some people it's kind of the essentials, if you want. And some people, consume content in different ways. And so it's 4 presentations, 4 webinar presentations. The first one's about your cell phone, because that's such a big one, because everybody's got a cell phone these days. And it's how we can use. It's like everybody wants to know, well, how can I make my cell phone safe? You can't, just unless you don't use it. That's the only way to make it safe. And so you can make it safer.
And
You can
wire
put it
it
on airplane mode. I beg your pardon?
You can Ethernet wire it, which is what I do. But I'm hearing your counsel, and maybe
Right.
it's time to consider getting rid of it altogether.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. And if you're doing it like that, then why? If you're using it in that way, then why have a cell phone? And also, there's kind of the wider question of, I don't want to give my money to support their racket.
Mhm.
I don't want to do that. So, and the more time goes by, the more principled I seem to become. And my wife says to me, "Don't do that. It's dangerous." When I was putting the Paul Doyon article out, don't do that. The voice of reason, my wife.
I can relate to that.
And other things I'm doing, but I believe in this, and this is why I'm doing it. So if ever I'm doing things I don't believe in, then it's time to hang up my hat and go do something else. So this webinar series is the how-to of all this. Number 2 is on the 5G and the wireless and the Wi-Fi. The third one is on electrical wiring and grounding, because that's another one that people are not thinking about, and it is complex, and I've made it simple. Or he says, people that have read it have said this to me. It's, look, Lloyd, we can make sense of this. And it's a subject that the electrical wiring is a subject which I've not seen anywhere else. So there are quite a few books now on EMFs and how to protect yourself, but to my knowledge, nobody has dealt with this electrical. Nobody's really gone deep on this electrical wiring aspect. And I have to say, just at this point, that Oren Miller gave me a lot of help. I sent him a couple of chapters, and he just kept going. And that was, and a number of other people as well, which I say at the beginning of the book. Obviously, I thank all the people that helped me. And again, because I don't consider myself an expert on EMFs, and I've interviewed so many different people, and really, it's like everybody knows their little bit. And so and that's another thing is I think when you're a sufferer, when you've experienced it firsthand, then that just makes it really completely different to if you're just a researcher. And the fourth webinar is about the advanced stuff, and it's about the shielding, and it's about the earthing. And because one of the things is like, most people, and may this continue, are not experiencing symptoms around EMS, but believe me, the day you do, then it's like, oh my God, then how do I shield? What do I do?
Yeah.
And so we're straight into panic mode, fight or flight, which a lot of people are in at the moment, sadly, with the whole coronavirus. And so it's what to do, how to do the shielding, the pros and the cons, because there are lots of cons with the shielding. So again, on my website, I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm trying to give really good information, and my take on this, and I have researched this. I have the personal experience, and some people love what I'm doing. Some people hate it. That's okay. But I do it to the best of my ability, and show continue doing so
Yeah.
for the foreseeable future anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. I mean, your work is so critical for people to just get empowered for themselves, you know, and take that step and do so in a simple way where you're not overwhelmed, you know. You can just go move through the content, read the book, or go through the courses and just progressively take tips and pointers. And that's what I've tried to do in my work too. It is difficult though, because it can so easily be overwhelming just as a topic in general. So I appreciate the fact that you say that the feedback you're getting is from people is that you're making it simple. That's really important. You talk about the electrical situation and wiring in the United States. This is something I learned recently. Is as of July of this year, there is a new National Electric Code, the NEC 2020. Have you heard about this with regards to dirty electricity? There's a new code, and from what I understand, and this was confirmed by a county electrician where I live, that that new code requires surge suppression devices, or and they're closely related to and overlap with dirty electricity filters on the whole home for new residential construction. For all new residential construction, you need to have a dirty electricity filter or a surge suppression device from July this year going forward. And so, you know, and B, that code is actually promoted, and that came about because of fire liability. So the dirty electricity, the surge, the voltage transients on the wiring in our house, causing explosions to smart meters and burning out of our electrical appliances and so forth, and the health effects and the increased billing that the smart meters are actually metering for this dirty electricity that is increasingly out there on the grid because of a fire liability standpoint, Lloyd. Now, this is first. I haven't shared this with anyone. This is new research. Because of a fire liability standpoint, the United States nationwide is now requiring surge suppression technology so that they can continue to, put this harmful electrical smart grid technology out there on the grid, but not have, we've seen some fatalities. We've seen hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of fires just from since the installation of smart meters. So I'm glad that you're getting into this and you're expanding this electrical, grid and the electricity in your home on the wiring, because that is a much bigger factor, I think, than either of us perhaps first realized when we got into the whole wireless EMF conversation.
That is absolutely true with respect to me, because like most people I was reacting to my cell phone, so I thought it was a cell phone that was a problem. And then you get others that are reacting to their Wi-Fi, so they do something about the Wi-Fi, and we tend to forget the other stuff. And that's why that's the core of what's in the book and what I teach, is to look at these 4 types of EMF exposures. And this just, obviously, it's just a way of understanding it, but electrical fields, magnetic fields, and dirty electricity, that's all related to the wiring. And you said it's this, the NEC, the National Electrical Code, has been changed because of this fire risk. I bet you that, okay, that might be what they're saying publicly, but when you look at the studies on how dirty electricity, the work done by obviously Dr. Sam Millam, Dave Stetzer, Professor Magna Havas, who I know you've interviewed also, the links with the cancer. Dr. Sam Millen, he says, that dirty electricity is behind the diseases of the 20th century and now the 21st century. All these chronic diseases, which are now the plague of our, modern civilization. So this is great news that the NEC code has done this, introduced this requirement. But nevertheless, it is so important, and you're right to underline, this is all about empowerment. This is all about empowerment. What I'm doing, and I think what you're doing too, it's all about empowerment, because we can't rely on the state. When I saw President Macron, so I live in France, when I saw him like a week ago and he announced there was going to be the lockdown, and he's kept going, war, 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 la guerre, la guerre, la guerre. And I was thinking, oh no, this is like, and a chill went on my spine.
Yeah.
A bit like the chill you did, the intention that you did at the beginning, but a different kind of chill. And a chill went on my spine, and I was thinking, boy, this sounds just so familiar. I thought I was listening to George Bush after 9/11, you know, the war against terrorism. It was the same thing. And I have a lot of respect for Macron. I find it hearing those words coming out of his mouth, they didn't seem to be his words, because it was, I don't know. So I'm not saying he didn't say it, but they don't fit with who he is. And so for me, there is something going on here behind this. And this is not my focus at all. And this, honestly, you do this so much better than me. And hats off to you for the great work you're doing on this, uncovering all this. And it is heavy. I know it's heavy. It's not me. It's not what I talk about. So I do talk about it in the book, and it goes back decades, all this shenanigans.
Yeah.
You know, with our governments, with the military even, and obviously with big corporations, more and more and more and more. And so, yeah, people do need to know the truth, and you know, thankfully, you're doing a great job of getting the message out about this, and others too. But yeah, so my focus is the solutions, and it's about, so I have a 3-step approach very quickly, which I share in my book, and I call it the and the and I like saying that because it makes me feel good. It's a nice Zen kind of sound. And so I beg your pardon?
It brings us back.
It brings us back. It grounds us. It takes us to that place. It connects us and below. And so the what is the the is U for understand, M for measure, and M for mitigate. And this is the basis of my 3-step protocol. Understand, that's what you're doing now. That's why you're listening to this conversation between me and Josh, and you know, future conversations, hopefully with Josh and with me perhaps, is understanding all of this. And Josh is understanding it, and he's sharing his understanding, and I'm doing the same, and I'm understanding. And my understanding is, so I feel it, and I feel so many things, and that's why I started doing the research and interviewing people, because I wanted to be able to explain it. And that's what I try and do now through the words, using my words, but you know, learning from others. And so I'm standing on giant shoulders when everything I'm doing here. So it's understanding, and there is a lot to understand, and it is scary, and it is complex at times. And then at the same time, it's really quite simple in some respects, what's going on in the world. And you have to you have to kind of make your own decisions about this. And I say to people, you know, don't take my word for it. You know, do your own research. So firstly is the understanding. Second thing, at some point you got to measure. You got to measure these EMFs. You got to buy a meter at some point. So people that are listening to this today, I'm guessing that they've possibly got a meter. So some audiences I'm speaking to, they don't know what an EMF meter is, what it looks like, but you know, 2 meters I recommend. The Tri-Field TF2, because it's so simple to use. It's not my favorite meter, but it's easy to use, and it's a tri-mode meter. And the Cornet ED88T, so it's another tri-mode meter, Cornet ED88T Plus, it's called now. I know you know those 2 meters. There are other meters out there. Those are 2 kind of beginner meters, which for not too much money, about $150, $200, you can really measure radio frequency radiation, electric fields, and magnetic fields. So you can measure already the wired and the wireless. And the third thing you need to do, which we should be all doing all the time, and I am still, is mitigating. And there's 3 ways of mitigating, essentially. First one is to turn off. whatever you're talking about, you know, be it the cell phone, be it the Wi-Fi, if you can, obviously, if you're in an office, then you can't. Second thing is to increase the distance. Why? Because again, because distance is your friend. And the third thing is to shield. And why is it the third thing? Because it's the last resort. Because shielding inevitably means introducing man-made materials, often metals, into your environment, and that you want to avoid if you can. And because, you know, what's this all about ultimately? It's about reconnecting with nature.
Yeah.
This is what this whole thing is about. It's what even the coronavirus is about ultimately, I believe, is reconnecting with nature. So we are using technology a lot to keep in touch. But it's I know what I'm doing more and more, even though I have to sign a bit of paper, you know, even to get out of the house and say how long I'm going to be out. I can't go out for more than an hour at the moment here in France. And it feels very, and I work pretty hard and I'm quite solitary. And like when I'm in my office, I'm full EMF. And then when I go out, I'm full not EMF. And really I have to get out more at the moment because I need to achieve this balance. And that's what is so important, is to achieve balance and to go outside and breathe fresh air if you're fortunate to live in a semi-rural environment like me. But even if you're in an office in, you know, if you're in a city environment at the moment, the air is fresher than it's ever been. And there's so many positive, you know, aspects to what's going on. And I really believe that we're going in the right direction. We're going in it. So there's going to be some pain, short to medium term, but we're going in the right direction.
Yeah. Thanks for that perspective, Lloyd. I just appreciate your work and just what you're bringing forward with the book and the online course, the kit. How can people access the online course?
There's a digital version also. So it's available in 2 versions. And you can get the digital version or you can get the physical version. The physical version is the paperback with the DVDs. It's a 2 DVD set. Why? Because I know people that are EHS, that's what they want, is they want the book. They don't want to be online at all, if possible. And so the DVDs is easy. They can watch that on a TV screen, which is you know, a certain distance away. It's very supported by the EMF community, but Dr. McCullough has been a great supporter and reviewed one of the chapters on the molecular biology, and Aura Miller, as I mentioned before, and also Gaetan Chevalier, for instance, on earthing. And yeah, so had a lot of support doing this. And yeah, thank you for, if you're one of those experts who's watching this, thank you. And thank you also, Josh, for your work, which has been outstanding, from what you've done right back with the smart meters and what you're doing now with the 5G. And I know what you're continuing to do, where you're going. This is excellent, and long may it continue. Yeah. It's doing the right thing. Yeah. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm seeing with the people that I've spoken to, that I'm speaking to, that are working in this field. And I can really see and feel those people that are doing the right thing, as opposed to the others that are just kind of making it look as though they are.
Yeah.
It's about doing the right thing. It's about following your heart. And that's what we all need to do. We need to be more connected to our hearts, to be grounded physically, mentally, spiritually. We need to be this more than ever. We need to connect to whatever you call it God, call it source, whatever you call it, but you need to connect to that higher power. And we need to stop looking at this silly news. So follow what's going on, but not all day long. There's a lot of silliness, and a lot of it is what's been broadcast on the media, the mainstream media, and also in the social media. I don't go there personally. So yeah, we need to be really more careful than ever. And this, it's coming back to the empowerment thing, because that's where empowerment lies, is because all the answers are actually here. We all already have them already. They're in here.
Yeah, that's so true. thank you for watching and being part of this conversation. And Lloyd, thank you so much just for your time today, for your work in the world, and for that insight that you bring, you know. And we won't get into it obviously on this call, but for you and I both connect in that spiritual realm too, and out of a place of service. So I just really honor you for that, and I look forward to the next time we talk.
Thank you so much, Josh.